Hey everybody, John Brown here, and today I'm going to be trying to review 8-Minute Empire's Legends in 8 minutes. Probably won't do it, that's okay, the game takes longer than 8 minutes too. The game can take probably around 20 minutes, more or less, depending on the number of players and your familiarity with the game. There are also some variants that can add a little bit of time, but not too much. It tries to take an area control game and put it into a small package in a small amount of time, and it succeeds at it pretty well, so let's take a look at how it's played. Alright, here we see the game kind of set up for 2 players, for the most part. Each player is going to get a card showing them some of the iconography, and then also things that will get victory points at the end of the game, and on the back, a way to help tally victory points at the end of the game. We're going to have all their pieces, their castles that they can build, to allow them to basically spawn guys at that point, and then here we have money. Each player is going to start with a certain amount of money, and at the beginning of the game, players will do a secret auction, put money in their hand, and bid on the first player. Now this is important because, for the most part, that's all the money you're going to get during the entire game. There may be a few cards you take during the game to give you a little bit more money, but you're going to have to balance that money throughout the rest of the game. We're going to start in 2 different areas. This is the start player, and then with more players we just have more. This extra area is chosen randomly. And then throughout the game, we're going to be basically choosing a card and taking the action on that card. Now, normally we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards laid out in a row, and in normal gaming fashion, if one gets taken, then the rest slide up and a new one comes out. And this will show their cost. So if we take the first card in a row, it's going to be free, and so on and so forth. So again, managing our money is going to be important. It might be a really valuable card, but we don't necessarily want to mess this over for the rest of the game. And on these cards, are going to show different actions at the bottom of the card, and then also at the top of the card, maybe a special ability or something else. So basically, a card that shows cubes on it is going to allow us to put cubes onto the board. A card with movement on it is going to allow us to either move 4 different cubes 1 space, 1 cube 4 spaces, so on, any combination we want to do. And in general, moving over water will cost 3, but we can reduce that. Also, we're going to get another cube, so this is a pretty good card, lots of movement and a cube. And then we'll get to the top in a second, but there's also the ability to build castles. So any space that you have out on the board, you can put one of those castles out. At the end of the game, they count as a piece basically out on the board. Okay, sorry, actually they are called cities, not castles, and whenever you put pieces out, they can go in the start region or somewhere where you've built one of those. Now, there are also a couple other cards. There are or cards where we can choose one of the 2 actions, and there are and cards where we have to do both. We have to do the first action and then the and action. We also see something else here that allows us to destroy a cube. In order to do that, we have to destroy another player's cube in a region that we already have a cube. So whenever we take a card, we go ahead and do its actions immediately. So for example, if we had 4 movements, we could move 1, and then let's see here, and there are little things on the board like these count as 3 separate islands, so controlling any one of these is basically going to give you 2 points, but movement between them does not count as moving over water. So I could take a second movement point to go here. I only have 2 left. I couldn't go to this island. So if I wanted to go to this island, I could spend 1 movement point and then 3 to go over there. Now, during the game, our movement may change, though, and each card is going to have something at the top of it, and there are many different things at the top of the cards. This is going to give us 2 coins immediately, so one of the ways you can get more coins, and also have one of these elixirs. And again, at the end of the game, we're going to see who has the most of these, and then that player will get 2 points. So collecting those can be important. Now, whenever you get one of these, basically whenever you take a card that allows you to get cubes, this will allow you to get 1 more, and this is cumulative for the number of cards that you have. This one's going to do the same thing with movements. Whenever you take an action that involves movement points, this will give you cumulative more movement points for each one of these you have. And again, this card just has some elixirs. Now this card allows us to reduce moving over water, or basically kind of flying, by 1 point. So if I had this card, every time I moved over water, like I did in that other example here, it would actually cost me 2, and it would go down to 1. 1 is the minimum, so having 3 of these cards doesn't do any more good. There are a bunch of cards that will give you victory points at the end of the game for certain combinations. Maybe 1 for every type of card, so you're going to see there's mountain, dire, there's all different cursed, forest, there's all different ancient, all different kinds of cards at the top. So maybe they'll give you bonuses for having all of a certain kind, having more of a certain kind than anyone else, or just every one of those cards that you have. There's a card that gives you in-game bonuses for having coins left and things like that. So all different kinds of one of those. Now this one's a pretty interesting one. This one means you're immune to attack. So you get to place 3 things out and destroy something, and then for the rest of the game, no one else can destroy one of your cubes. So that's a pretty cool card. And then this one, is another example. So that dire card I just showed you, the dire giant. So, +1 point for the end of the game for every dire card I have. So there's some different examples of the special abilities that the cards are going to give you. There's a few more variants that you could add to the game optionally if you want. Now this is a 2 to 4 player game, and if you want to, you could play with different leaders that basically give your faction a special power. You can play with Citadel tokens. By placing these out on the board, you make certain spaces worth an extra victory point at the end of the game. Play with Encounter tokens. These 2 portals basically allow players to move between 2 different spots for 1 movement point. The Rogue causes anyone who moves an army into a space to have to give up a coin. They must do so to get in. And then the Dragon, see a little 7 in a cube, whoever places the 7th cube into region with the Dragon, no matter who has majority, slays the Dragon and gets 2 bonus victory points. You can also use Explore tokens. Now these would normally be face up, and the first person to build a city in a territory with one of these gets these. These are pretty self-explanatory. This gives you 2 elixirs at the end of the game for that bonus. Now the book gives you 1 victory point, and if there's a tie at the end of the game, this breaks ties. These are similar to the cards that give you an extra cube, or that give you an extra movement every time you take one of those actions. This just gives you a coin immediately, and if you play with the Poison Swamp, you actually put these all face down, shuffle them up, and place them out on the board. Whoever collects the Poison Swamp loses a victory point. So a couple more things to keep in mind. Each one of these boards is actually 2-sided, so they can be shifted around any way you want to, as long as you have connections to the other islands. You can actually play in a rectangle too, instead of the kind of T setup we have here. Now at the end of the game, we're going to get points for, again, controlling any region with the most, controlling the most regions on 1 island. So this would be 1 island, but this also would be 2, so that allows some variance. Also any 2 points for the elixirs, and then points for any bonuses we have on the cards, and then also if we're playing with some of the expansions, points for the things that they allow. The game ends when each player has a certain number of cards, or is basically taken a certain number of actions, depending on the number of players. If there's a tie, the player with the most coins wins. If they're still tied, the most armies, still tied, the most regions. And again, if you have the book and you're involved in that tie, then you are the winner no matter what the other tiebreakers score up to. Alright, so I managed to explain the game in about 7 minutes, and my final thoughts might push me a little over 8. I apologize for that. This game, certainly tries to cram in being an area control game into maybe a 20-minute filler, which is an impressive feat. I personally didn't find it as enjoyable as hoping, but then again, on this channel, I try to be as objective and see as many sides as I can, and part of being objective is knowing your own biases. El Grande is my favorite game. I think it's a fantastic area control game, and so this game obviously doesn't quite live up to that for me. However, if you looked at this game and said, hey, I want to try out an area control game, this looks like a good way to start, we need more fillers for our game group, then that's great. For me, I'd probably still rather play Love Letter or something. I haven't gotten sick of it, even though some other people have. But, it's an impressive job what they did, certainly, and I can see that even if it's not personally my favorite game. Maybe Tiny Epic Kingdoms will provide a little bit more of that strategy, but then again, it's going to be a little bit of a longer game. So if you're looking for an introduction to area control, or you like area control but need a filler for your group, now this does only go up to 4, but still, if you have that situation where you have a big group where you're playing multiple games, as my group often has, then this is not a bad thing to take with you. It may not be my personal favorite, but if you looked at it and said, hey, it's pretty impressive, and it is, managing to cram, a decent amount of strategy, especially what I liked about it is that starting with a certain number of coins and trying to plan it out, because, even if you spend all your coins, then you still can take an action, you're just going to have to take that first card, and so there is some interactivity, players maybe saying, I don't need this card, but this will affect you. This game allows for that, and that amount of, a little bit of interactivity and a decent amount of strategy into this small of a package in this small amount of time, even if I don't necessarily think it's the best, is impressive, and you might enjoy it. So I hope you enjoyed the quick review and my attempt at quick final thoughts, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Alright, bye.